What would you say is the status right now of things?
Yeah, the attack was rather significant. I think it's a dozen killed, unfortunately, 70 to 90 wounded. I think that's going to probably increase. So it's unfortunate. Thoughts and minds out to all those people. But the attacks have been to the major city. You see that increase. So the idea of the ceasefire, again, in Putin's standpoint, he's not really engaged or really talking about that. The idea of Trump saying, hey, stop. I completely get it, but let's see what the actions are going to be. And right now, that massive barrage definitely shows that Putin's interested about gaining more in Ukraine than stepping back.
Yeah, there's this back and forth about whether Zelensky and Ukraine are going to be willing to give up any land. Is Crimea in play? Is it more than that? The Zelensky statement today, he was meeting with the President of South Africa. He says, hey, you want us to compromise? He says the fact that Ukraine's ready to sit down at the negotiating table after a ceasefire, after a complete ceasefire with the terrorists who organized all this on our land, exclusively on our land, that is a great compromise. He says the map we have on the tablet, let's talk about it, Glenn, as we've done so many times here about whether we're redrawing lines on the map of Ukraine. So the Crimean Peninsula, again, right down in this area is one thing. I think the other lines that people are talking about is this Russian-controlled territory. Are we going to draw new borders along here? Zelensky leads you to believe none of the above. Where do you think this is all going?
Yeah, it's really tough. I mean, if you take a look at, Crimea, people haven't really talked about Crimea because it was all, like it or not, it was almost assumed like it was lost because that was, 8+ years ago. And so that was sort of new. And I think that frustrated with Trump today. But the point about those lines, yeah, we've discussed it. Is that something that you can negotiate out with Russia? There'd have to be some huge carrot for Russia to pull back because there's no possible way military for them to be pushed back. So there has to be something there. But I still think that the lines are going to be negotiated where everybody has to give a little wiggle here to get something. Demilitarized zone, we discussed that. So that's really going to be the biggest thing to really work out. I mean, if you ask, Putin really wants most of Ukraine from Kyiv, at least east. That's where all the money is. And he still has a lot of troops. So in the long game, Russia dominates this. Unfortunately, Ukraine doesn't have enough people to last, and it's been 3 years.
So I talked to our friend Paul Rykhoff about this exact topic yesterday on the show. And, his point was that basically he doesn't think Zelensky has to or should be talking about giving up anything. Here's what Paul said about Ukraine giving up land. I want you to counter this because I think you might feel differently. Here's Paul.
I don't think they will, and I don't think they should ever accept losing a part of their country, right? Because then
I understand the concept. I'm saying then we might be stuck in a stalemate for a long,
But I think
it
also opens up aggression. It opens up an invitation for more aggression. It sends a message to Eastern Europe that, you know what, you might have to give up some of your land too. Putin took it by force against the international order, against NATO, against American interests, and we can't reward that bad behavior by saying, you know what, we'll compromise and just give you a piece of their country, and you're not going to give up anything.
What would you say about that case of precedent, Glenn? I do think there's a fair point to be made there, and the quote I would use, I was reading it earlier. I mean, think about what people like Marco Rubio used to say. Like when he was a senator, Rubio literally said that the U.S. can't be recognized in Putin's claims, or we risk establishing a dangerous precedent. And he was referring to China and Taiwan at the time. Now there he is sitting on the couch of the Oval Office. He's in a different position. But people used to worry about precedent. What would you say in this case?
Yeah, I agree with something. I want to counter it in a little bit. So I agree that the whole idea of what Russia did in invading Ukraine, yeah, I completely understand that. But you also have to remember that all the other countries surrounding are NATO. So if you trip one, you trip them all, right? That's a huge war compared to where he's at in Ukraine. He's losing, or I wouldn't say losing, he's losing a lot of troops, at least in Ukraine. So, Russia's not really that big, formidable, fighter that we've seen in the past. But as far as how this conflict is, if we look at it of where we're at, 3 years, Ukraine's pretty much got most of the troops. They haven't been put in reserve. They're all fighting. They haven't had a break. So the longer we go with this, Russia has more people. And unfortunately, that's the deficit of Ukraine. So even if we gave them all the weapons and everything, it's the people that exist. And in the long game, Russia wins. And Russia, I would anticipate an incredible offensive when the thaw continues and it dries up. That's the thing to worry about. And I'd hope we get to a peace deal before then.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.